Hi, I'm Janet, co-founder of FootprintLab. We provide the world's best ESG data as a service. Our data comes direct from the UN, where I worked for decades, and academia, where my co-founder worked for decades. And our data has complete global coverage, so it's a really great match for Mastercard's global ecosystem. So we want to work together to get ESG data to every transaction, everywhere. So what's the problem that we care about? Well, everyone wants to know the carbon footprint of everything. It's government, it's global supply chains, investors, and increasingly consumers and procurers. And while solutions exist for specific sectors or countries, our vision is that every transaction everywhere can have automatically embedded sustainability data, whether it's a purchase or in your bank account. Now, this is both necessary for climate change, but also possible today. If we combine our global ESG data with your transaction data and reach across the global economy, everyone everywhere could have instant ESG insights every time they make a payment. So what is our product specifically? It is a comprehensive and credible ESG dataset that's easy to integrate into transaction data. Now, we cover every country and sector, and we have multiple impact categories, carbon footprint, and more. And our data is used by the UN, peer-reviewed by academia, and my co-founder and I have decades of credibility from our careers. But best of all, it's easy to integrate. It's an API, and we can customize to your data categories, and the workflow is as simple as A times B equals C. And easiest of all, we have exclusivity over commercial use of the data, so you don't need to shop around. So let me show you how this works for one transaction. Here is a company receipt for uniforms purchased from Laos. All you need to tell our API is the product or sector, the country and the year, and we can deliver a suite of sustainability intensities per dollar. Just multiply it by the amount, and your customers will have access to complete ESG insights across their general ledger. Now, that saves them time and money on expensive consultants and allows them to focus on solutions. So who can use our data? Well, it actually is any of these sectors in the table. If you're in one of these sectors, they are already serving the global ESG accounting demand. So you can use our data to enrich your existing value propositions for your customers. If you're new to ESG accounting, we are the best foundation to build on because of it's so easy and comprehensive. But if you're already in ESG accounting, we can expand your capabilities to new markets or impact areas. Now, in case you're wondering, we are not an app. We're just the world's best data. So we don't make SaaS, we just enhance it. And the reason is no one wants to use an app made by the UN, and I have tried that. The areas that we'd love to collaborate with Mastercard on are expanding those existing ESG accounting assets, supporting ecosystem partners, and getting into underserved regions. So we love a good brainstorm or chat, so please reach out. We'd love to chat with you.
Hi, Janet. Thanks so much for that
Okay.
great pitch. I'll now open it up for Q&A from our audience. And to kick us off, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So how do you compare to the other data providers that are out there? And, there's so much data already.
Yeah.
Why do we need more?
Yeah, great question. So I've been using this data for quite a long time. There's two data sources that have that comprehensive blanket coverage, and we're the one that's used by the UN. So we have that credibility. And when we do a comparison, we have more countries, 164 countries and regions. So we'd really love to back people who are working in countries that don't have the data. We have time series data, and we also have a lot of other metrics apart from carbon footprints. So with this sort of interest in nature-based accounting and human capital, you could see in that example, we have loads of different insights for every transaction.
Awesome. Great. One question, are you tackling the B2B platform space?
Yes. So what we see is there've been really good B2C solutions, but because policy is driving the demand for carbon accounting. We think that B2B transactions are really going to be where embedded ESG in transactions are expected. And that's why, the underserved regions, especially, that will have new pressure, new policies to enrich B2B transactions. We think that's where it's going to be really hot. And we cover all sectors beyond merchant category codes as well. So keen to work with you guys on that.
Awesome. Okay. Another question. So, because since you mentioned Footprint Lab is not an app, so how would one use the data? Do you need a separate tool to interpret the data since you don't have an app?
No, it's it's an API. So A times B equals C. So our impact per dollar, and then you know how many dollars are spent, and that'll give you the total impact. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Another question we have, how do you go about creating and expanding your database?
That's done by the universities, which we have an exclusive partnership with. The universities are in Australia and around the world, and they use publicly available data inputs that are economic and environmental, and then they combine it in a peer-reviewed data architecture. And so those updates are annual, and the great thing is they're the most recent ones. So our time lag is 2 years. So we have 2022 real data. There's always a 2-year time gap because that's the limited inputs, whereas other data sources will actually have quite an old data and then forecast it or nowcast it. So it's another advantage of us.
Okay, perfect. We have a question, and actually, Janet and you and I have talked about this, but can you share more on how you calculate product footprint versus MCC or industry footprints?
Yes. So the product footprints are usually done in a bottom-up approach. So you need to really look at, every phone, for instance, will now have product carbon footprint data. And that's by really looking at the components and everything. Whereas industry footprints are done using input-output analysis with environmental extensions. But basically, you take all global emissions, you plug them into economic models, and then you trace them down supply chains to see where they line up. And DEI, just by the way, for Bob, we do have labor footprints, so full-time equivalents per dollar, and we have gender disaggregation, so we can tell you the gender footprint of your supply chains. Yeah.
Awesome, great. And thank you, Janet, for looking into the Q&A for that one. I missed it, but that actually does bring us to time for Q&A regardless.
Yes.
If you have questions, folks, feel free to continue to put them in the chat.
Love.
Can answer them, or we can send them.
Or get in contact.
Awesome.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Janet.